we purchased these tents, and we found that in those purchases that SPRINGBAR was by far the quality tent that we wanted to invest in.
Hi everyone, welcome back to my next video. Today we're having a real treat. We're meeting with Pace, the owner-manager of SPRINGBAR Tents. We have one of their beautiful tents set up behind us. Hi Pace, welcome to the channel.
Thanks, Bob.
And of course with us is Sue Ann, who is the co-founder along with myself and the executive director of Homes on Wheels Alliance.
Hi everybody.
Right now we are in Pahrump, Nevada, where we are doing the BYOV, Bring Your Own Vehicle, where people bring their vehicles and we put in solar and all kinds of things. What all do we do?
Beds, shelving, flooring, insulation, ceiling fans for ventilation. All those key elements that help us thrive in our homes on wheels and make them safe and secure homes.
But we have one small problem. Is if we're going in and putting in a new floor and insulation and solar, their stuff can't be in there. So their stuff has to all come out, and we can't just throw it on the desert. It'll all blow away, get dirty. So what has been our solution?
Well, we have been providing our recipients with tents, not just for their stuff, but for their person.
Right.
Because sometimes these builds take multiple days and they have to have some place to sleep. So in doing that, we purchased these tents, and we found that in those purchases that SPRINGBAR was by far the quality tent that we wanted to invest in as an organization. It was roomy. The ones that we chose were 10 by 10, and most importantly, they stood up to the desert wind, which can be ferocious at times.
So we contacted Pace at SPRINGBAR and said, hey, we need to purchase. We bought five. We bought 5 tents. Can we ask for some kind of a donation? And Pace, you very generously offered us a donation.
Yeah, and very, very cool to have you reach out, Sue Ann. And of course, we've known about Bob for a long time and seen him on YouTube. And so just really exciting to get the email. And then when you explained what you're doing with Howa and helping people set up their vehicles to live, just thought, you know, what a cool thing to be a part of. And so we were just we felt really fortunate to be able to get SPRINGBAR tents out here, and what a great fit, because they're really the perfect tent for high desert climates. You know, the cotton, it's breathable, it's really comfortable, and like Sue Ann said, they can really just handle the wind and you know, whatever the desert throws at them. So
yes.
Great fit and just a great opportunity.
And they are a great tent. Now, probably a lot of you, when you think of cotton canvas tents, you think of Kodiak. I did. And so we have a little bit of story why we deliberately compared the two and have chosen always, all of our tents since that comparison have been SPRINGBARs, because we did this direct comparison. At the very beginning of Howa, this was like 4 years ago.
2019.
2019.
Yes.
We wanted to do a Lona tent. Why don't you tell us about the Lona tent?
So sometimes people contact us and they have a vehicle, but the vehicle is so small that it's difficult really to be a comfortable home on wheels. So we have provided, in the interim, until they can move into a larger vehicle, a tent for them to stay in. And I should have done the research beforehand, but I believe it's safe to say we've loaned out or granted about 10 different tents since 2019.
So I think tents are a really good option for a lot of people. You got a good, reliable vehicle, you move into there, and the tent makes it comfortable. When we go inside the new tent we've got set up behind us, you're going to see this thing is a mansion. It's enormous in there. So when we decided to do the, back in 2019, I didn't know much about tents. I bought both a Kodiak and a SPRINGBAR. We donated them. We had an event where both were set up. We had both the recipients. And so tell us about what that event taught us.
Sure. So we had both of these tents side by side, and so we could very much compare the quality and the basically the quality of the two tents. And it became very obvious to us at every level that the SPRINGBAR was of a higher quality. And if we wanted to invest in a tent that we wanted to last literally for years, we wanted to invest in the SPRINGBAR.
Well, Pace, why don't you tell us about a little bit of the background of SPRINGBAR and how it ended up here and how they ended up being such extremely high quality tents.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. So SPRINGBAR is a really old brand. It's been around since the early 1960s in Salt Lake City, and a guy named Jack Kirkham Sr. Had a little canvas tent and awning shop in Salt Lake, and that was right about the time that folks were first starting to camp recreationally in America. If you think about the 1950s, going to national parks, loading up your vehicle, and so his little shop really started to become kind of an outdoor store, and people would come and they would get camping equipment, sleeping bags. And at the time, they were selling a lot of like Army surplus tents. And people started asking Jack for a tent that would be easier to pack up, easier to set up, that would really kind of fit that need for that first kind of group of vehicle car campers. And so he started tinkering, and that's when he came up with the design for the SPRINGBAR tent. And so since then, 1961 was the first year he did it. That tent's been in continuous production in Salt Lake City to this day. And it's just a really clever design. There's only a few poles. The quality of materials is really high. It's 100% cotton canvas that has a treatment called Sun Forger on it, which is highly water resistant, mildew resistant. And a cotton canvas like that is really the original kind of waterproof, breathable fabric technology, where you can go inside the tent and it still breathes. It feels really comfortable. It doesn't collect condensation on the inside. But when rain hits it or you get into some weather, all that cotton swells a little bit, and it really creates a self-sealing, watertight effect. And so the tents don't leak either. And so you kind of get the best of both worlds. And
breathing and watertight.
And anybody who's spent time in a SPRINGBAR tent, in a cotton tent, really knows that difference and how much more comfortable they are to be in. And so, Jack, they were making the tent for 30, 40, 50 years in Salt Lake City. A lot of Boy Scouts use the tents. If you grew up in Utah like I did, those are the tents you grew up going to Boy Scouts in. And then in the early 2000s, the original patents on the SPRINGBAR tent expired, and some copycat tents started popping up, and people using Jack's design. And so the tent you mentioned, like a Kodiak, that's an example of that. But we just like to point out we're the original, and we're still in Salt Lake City doing it the same way we always have. And there's a lot of details that I can show you, Bob, when we look at this tent, of the way we make them and the way we put them together and the components that go into it that just make it the best quality tent possible. And they're details that have been worked out by Jack and Jack's son, Jack Jr., who started running the business after Jack. The details they've worked out that really make the tent perform from being out there for years and years and years. And I would add, Sue Ann, with a great benefit of choosing SPRINGBAR, because we do have a workshop in Salt Lake City where we're making tents, is that we can repair and fix almost anything on these tents.
Wonderful.
So if something goes wrong, if your dog jumps through the screen window, or you back over a tent pole, or anything can happen out there, you don't have to throw the tent out and buy a new one. You can send it to the shop, and we can fix and repair almost anything on the tent and keep it going. So it's really a lifetime tent that you can pass on if you take care of it. That'll outlast you. And so, when you choose SPRINGBAR, you know that there's a shop behind you that can keep that tent going, and I think that means a lot to folks.
Yeah, so it's really both American made and can be American repaired.
That's correct.
Local. Love it.
Right.
And virtually all of the knockoffs are coming from China.
Correct.
And so they're probably beating you a little bit on price, usually not by a lot, but if you have a problem, you call them, probably no one's going to answer.
That's correct. So, well, and I haven't called them, so I can't say,
Yeah.
but I know that if you call us, we're going to answer the phone and we're
Right.
going to do everything we can to help you take care of that tent, and solve it. And there's a great team of craftspeople that are just amazing back in Salt Lake who work in the shop on these tents every day. And so when you choose to invest in a U.S. made SPRINGBAR tent, you're really supporting that team of people and that are keeping that tradition and that craft alive, and really doing just amazing work there. So
Right.
Very good.
Yep. But to keep up with competition, you are now making a made in China tent that will bring down the price a little bit. Is that right?
That's right, Bob. So we do two different lines of tents. We do our U.S. made line of tents in Salt Lake City, and then we also do an imported line of tents that we're doing overseas, and that's a really high quality tent, and built on Jack's original patterns. But it does let us have a little lower price point on those tents and just make it available to more customers and to more people that want to get into a SPRINGBAR tent.
But if I get one of those and run over or pull for somehow damage it,
Yep.
I can still call and have you fix it.
100%.
100%.
If it's a SPRINGBAR tent, we can work on any of those tents,
Right.
and have replacement parts for all of them, and we can keep them going.
Right.
So
So it's one of those things, you pay more up front generally, but then when you hand it down to your kids with the intention that they can hand it down to their kids, that you don't cry about the dollar you paid extra up front. Then you just think, man, I made a really good choice here. And that's really what you're buying when you buy a SPRINGBAR. And we wanted, with our loaner program, we'd loan it out with the idea that if they moved up, they'd give the tent back, and we'd hand it out to someone else, and we could keep doing that. And we would, in the beginning, we bought all the tents until we worked out this donation through you. But we wanted it to go on, and so we wanted to buy a high quality tent we could rely on in the future. And so that's why we've always shown Hallam and myself, we buy SPRINGBAR tents for our canvas tents. Great tent.
Well, I would like to say that Alliance is in Howa's name, Homes on Wheels Alliance. It's so good to be in alliance with you. Thank you.
And it's a real honor for us. So just coming out here today and seeing the tent set up and seeing the camp and seeing the work that you're doing for folks to help them get set up in their vehicles was really cool to come up the road and
see those
tents set up,
yeah,
and the camp, and what a great thing to be a part of. So
right,
wonderful.
Yeah, we're just down the road from the BYOV camp. They're all camping together, the volunteers and the recipients. And so we have like 5 of them set up?
We have 6 SPRINGBARs set up.
SPRINGBARs?
So the one that we originally had is still going strong, and then the 5 that you provided.
Cool. So, it's a little SPRINGBAR city over there.
It is.
In with
cool.
the vans and trailers. And
of course.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's we are huge fans of SPRINGBAR. We highly recommend them to you. Now, one of the things that I have thought would make it a lot more useful is the wood stove. You have had a wood stove model, but you have just come out with the new one, which is behind us, which is we're going to shoot a video just on this tent. And it has a wood stove. You can see the jack, and the stove the pipe is sticking out of the wood stove jack. So you just added this new model that will do the wood stove.
Yeah, and that was when I first started working with SPRINGBAR, Bob. That was one of the first ideas we had, and something we just thought would be really cool is what if we could find a way to put a little wood burning stove inside of a SPRINGBAR tent. I think a lot of people are familiar with like a traditional wall tent or a big hunting tent that has the wood stove in, and it's a great experience. But those tents are really big and really heavy, and unless you're going out for 3 or 4 weeks at a time and the tent is going to stay up, it's kind of a big project for going out for the weekend or a few days or taking it on a trip. And so to be able to combine that ability to use the stove with a SPRINGBAR tent, which you can set up in under 10 minutes, would really just be a game changer. And personally for me, the parks or a lot of outdoor places have gotten just so crowded over the past few years. If you go in the summer or at kind of peak season, but if you go out in the winter, you have those places all to yourself.
Yeah.
And having a hot tent or a a tent that has the stove in it really makes that possible, and it makes it really enjoyable. You can hang out in the tent, you can cook on the stove, you can make it 80 degrees in there in your t-shirt. You walk outside when it's cold, you say, oh, it's really beautiful, and then you go back inside and warm up. And so especially like in the desert like this in the winter, you know, like in the middle of the day when the sun's out, it's nice to go hiking, it's nice to be out, but it just gets bitter cold at night.
It sure does.
It really makes that, you know, a great experience.
It
and
does.
so for the past few years, we've been doing these stove compatible tents, and at least for me, it's really been a game changer to be able to get out kind of all seasons. But for somebody who's, you know, living with their vehicle and they're kind of moving from camp to camp, it's just a great option because you have a lot of space. It's a space that you can heat and really be comfortable in. And when the weather gets bad, you know that the tent's going to hold up to it and,
Right.
and be a safe place to hang out and still have a good time.
Well, Pace, let me thank you again for coming down, setting this tent up, and for your amazing donation to HAWA. We really, really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Bob and Sue Ann.
Thank you.
Really cool to make it out here and
see you face to face after
see
those
what
emails.
You're doing.
Yeah.
Really neat to see. And what a beautiful place out here in the
Yes.
desert. So.
So we're going to end this video here. We'll go take a look at the new Skyliner, which has a lot of really big advances. It's really an amazing tent, and it has the wood stove set up in it. Give you an idea of just how comfortable you can be in one of these SPRINGBAR tents. All right, if you got anything out of this video, like us on YouTube, subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button, and we'll talk to you later. Bye now.